Welcome to the 30/30 Health Podcast. The following discussion is for education and entertainment. It is not intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first discussing it with your doctor. Here is your host, Dr. Ruiz.
Hello everyone, super excited about my guest today. My guest today is Aaron Alexander. He is an accomplished manual therapist and movement coach with over 15 years of professional experience. He is the founder of the Align Method, an integrated approach to functional movement and self-care that has helped thousands of people out of pain and into health. He also hosts the top-rated Align podcast featuring the biggest names in movement and wellness. I hope you enjoy the show, but before we begin, a word from our sponsor.
Hey there, Dr. Alan Christensen here with you. I'd love to take just a moment and tell you about our Thyroid Advisor program. So what is the Thyroid Advisor visit? Well, imagine that one of your closest friends happened to be a thyroid doctor and that they understood the conventional, the naturopathic, and all the functional approaches. You know, they just wanted you to feel better and they were happy to video chat whenever you needed them. So that's basically it. Just click the link to set up a time and the IH docs are happy to help out today.
Hello everyone, super excited to be here with my friend Aaron Alexander. Man, how are you? Crazy week a couple of days ago at PaleoFX, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, dude, it's a pleasure. This is not a video podcast, but he is fully nude.
Yep.
This is so. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna release this, but he's suntanning and with a margarita in his hand.
It feels good.
Yeah.
I'm lathered up in baby oil, pressing my body against the screen right now. Actually, it's good. Feels good.
Dude, I told you to use coconut oil.
Oh yeah, right. Should I use coconut oil? That's legit talk. What do you think about coconut oil?
Well, it does have a little bit of SPF. It does protect you from a little bit of UV radiation. I'm dark, and I like going outside, and getting full sun. And then putting like a long sleeve shirt so I don't get cancer. I tend not to need to use any SPF. There was this new paper that just came out that they were looking at levels of vitamin D made even after putting like pretty harsh SPF. And it doesn't seem to affect vitamin D production like we thought it did. But, there's other particles within suntan lotions or sun blockers that are not very good for you.
My rule with it, which is, I think it's fairly typical rule, is if I wouldn't put it on my tongue, I don't put it on my skin. So like zinc is something, I don't know how much zinc oxide I'd probably put on my tongue realistically, actually. but I'm curious with you, with zinc, it's blocking out 100% of the UVA, UVB. It's essentially like wearing a sweatshirt. Whereas with typical sunblocks, you're blocking out just, is it UVB that you're blocking, I think?
Yeah, you're blocking some of the spectrum, and that scares me.
And that's the issue. It's that incomplete aspect of the sun that your body's like, whoa, like what's this? Same thing happens when you're behind windows, when you're in your car driving. And so that's from what my research, mainly just talking to people on my own podcast. That's what I've heard is that's when it gets tricky, is we block out certain aspects of the spectrum, but not the whole thing.
And one thing that freaked me out about this whole vitamin D situation is that, when you take vitamin D, that increases your levels of vitamin D in your blood. But when you convert sunlight into vitamin D, there's all of these different pathways that we're activating, and we don't know what those pathways are doing. The end point might be vitamin D, but what about all of the side chains that are producing all the things that could be doing something else that we haven't investigated or we don't know about? So that's why I prefer full sun. I don't like, when people burn. You should build your tan, and then be cognizant about going out to the beach and getting some sun, and maybe putting a hat, and then putting your your long sleeve shirt or zinc oxide.
I saw Mr. Dr. Mercola. He put an article up on his website, and I talked to him about it in a past podcast as well. Like the value of getting out during the most intense part of the day. And so that's like totally, completely counterintuitive to what we've thought and told our kids and ourselves for the last forever. And it's like, oh, yeah, actually, you need that full spectrum of light throughout the whole entire day. So says people smarter than me.
Makes total sense. I don't know. Were you at PFX 2014?
Maybe. I think that might have been the first year I started going to that.
When Daniel Vitalis was there?
I think I'm pretty sure that was the first year I was out there.
Yeah, I was there too, man. He described as Homo erectus fragilis.
Fragilis, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
That's where we're at.
yeah, and it's the truth, It's we are very fragile, and it's because we wear a lot of cushion in our shoes, and we sleep in very comfortable beds, and we wear a lot of SPF, and and we are not used to the environment, and we grew up, or we evolved in this hermetic environment, and all of this cushiness is making us fragile, and it sucks. Okay, so before we continue with this crazy conversation, I usually start my podcast by asking my guest, what is your hero story? How the hell did you end in this hell space? So, Aaron, what the fuck, man?
Well, so the story that I usually kind of align with that is which I think stories are just, it's like I think the psychological term is the remembered present is a term that I learned recently, where so you're always just recounting the past, recreating that memory in the present moment. So your story is whatever the heck you create it to be right now. So I'm always questioning of like what that story is in the first place. But so I started off very insecure in my body, and that turned into being really obsessed with bodybuilding and just like packing on heaps of like, I just call it like useless slabs of meat onto my body as like a protective mechanism essentially. And that led eventually into a lot of imbalance, and eventually like all sorts of joint dislocations. And it's kind of like when you get rich, it's like as you get more money, you just become more of what you are, and so with my insecurity, as I got more muscle and more like outward strength, I was just a bigger version of insecurity, more wrapped up and bound inside my muscles now, as opposed to just like being all skinny giraffe like I was. From there, when the parts started flying off, then I got enamored with how to put the parts back together. And then in that journey, I've seen other people going through the exact, maybe not exact, but a really similar process. So we want the end goal without actually looking at what are the steps to build that fit, stacked up, sexy looking, hunter-gatherer-esque kind of body. And so we just end up going straight to making the muscles, as opposed to looking like you're saying, like getting like the Homo fragilis stuff. Instead of going in and actually creating it from the ground up, we just go straight to the roof and try to like pack on the superficial layers. And so now I'm kind of like on some type of voyage to help people with unwinding those patterns, I guess.
You talk about insecurity, and I think you hear a lot within the movement about people being insecure, and you're like, shit, and now in front of all these people, maybe with my podcast or on a stage or whatever. But I struggled with weight, all my life, and then I found the paleo diet, and that's kind of like set me in the right path. And you hear a lot of people struggling with weight. Did you ever have any trouble with like orthorexia or anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You mind if we talk about that? Because I think that's a conversation that is missing in the space, especially from guys. We hear it every once in a while from girls, but it's very present.
Yeah. So my thing was, I was, when I looked into a mirror, I would see not enough, which would translate into being too small or too skinny. And so like my projection onto that mirror was, and this is me 15 years later putting that label of not enough. At the time, it was just, I need more muscle, but now every time I look in the mirror, it's like, oh, not enough, not enough, not enough. And so I'd pack on more muscle, and I'd do more push-ups and eat more creatine and more protein and all that. And I think it's just like coming to terms with really loving your body where you're at. It's going back to like the financial analogy. Like, I think it's easier for you to learn how to live when you have less, almost. So when you have less going on, it's almost it's like the variables are less. Once you start building up, you build on a faulty foundation, and you start getting praise, and you start building your brand and building your life around that thing that started with a core root of instability. It's like a really slippery place to be at. And that's what we before this conversation, or we recorded, or I don't know when you started recording. That's kind of what we were getting at, is that you see that a lot of people building their identities on this thing that the core root was a sensation of feeling, like seeking validation through something that's superficial. So I mean, we can talk a little bit, I guess, about like the process of loving your body. It sounds like that's maybe something that's of value.
Should we be guiding our coaching or our clients or our patients, with, oh, you want to look sexy in a swimsuit, or do you want to look sexy naked? Is that what we should be preaching or talking about?
I think it'd be really cool for people to just check in and see how much joy you incorporate into each day. So that's something that I'll feel myself, like before I go surf, for example. I'm putting the surfboard into the car, and like I literally get this like giddiness of like ooh, like this joy. Like it feels like joy. Same thing I get it with when I get on my motorcycle. Before I start the bike, and I get this like literally this little like internal giggle of like, yes. And so much of our fitness is based off of just like martyring ourselves for the belief that we need to have these muscles. So I think that just asking yourself that question, like how much of my day actually incorporates joy, like unbridled joy, where it was just like, wow, like I'm just happy to be alive, versus how much of your day have you kind of signed this this invisible contract that you need to work for everything. And I think that our fitness practice, our movement practice, can be more sport. It could be more community based. It could be more dance based. It could be more like actually learning skills that develop you as a human being beyond isolating that into I'm just creating muscle onto my biceps and my pecs. And so I think that's an interesting question to ask, is just what percentage of your day is you actually experiencing joy? Sounds kind of like a fluffy thing to ask, but I think it's a worthy question.
Yeah, and I was talking to Dan Party. We were talking to Dan Party. You remember having the conversation about, hey, any new biohacks that you've been trying? And he said, yeah, a couple of times during the day, I'll like close my office, open the windows, put on my headphones, and I start dancing.
Yeah, dance. Yeah,
dude,
exactly.
I've been doing it.
Good,
yes! Totally. It's like I've been doing it, and it's like a shot of like oxytocin, man. It's awesome. And it's silly and it's stupid or whatever, but it's not, and I get joy out of like, going through my playlists and you're like, oh, what am I gonna, re-listen to today? And then you start moving, and then 20 minutes later you feel so light and so awesome.
Yeah, and it's also one of the best medicines for preventing any type of cognitive disorder, cognitive decline in general. Essentially it's like they call like brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the BDNF, is like Miracle-Gro for your brain. Like dance is Miracle-Gro for your brain. When you're synchronizing your body to music, that's a really high level movement task. If you stack that up on top of synchronizing your body to music to another person's body, whoa, man, your neurology is like on fire at that point. And so what we end up doing oftentimes is, again, we do this like work thing of our fitness, and we'll just count repetitions of doing 8 reps. Like that's the thinking part of your workout. Is I remembered the number 8. I got to 7, and I remembered I did one more, and then I put it's like that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with isolating variables and just going really down, myopic like that. I think it's really valuable for us to also put all of the pieces together into something as complex as something like dance, especially if you give a damn about your brain.
So when did you have this light bulb moment and you were like, you know what, I don't need to put any more muscle. I love my body just the way it is. What was the realization like? Because as a guy, that's difficult to kind of like process, or it might be like frowned upon to have those thoughts even.
I'm still dealing with it. I mean, I just finished up doing like cover photos for the book, and I'm certainly cognizant of not wanting to revert back to like baby giraffe frame of the past, and so, but the truth of the matter is I know what does better for clicks. I know what does better for what there's some type of, I think it's mostly sexual, like some deep mammalian, like, oh, like this sexual urge when you see another animal that's like looks like they're strong and in charge and all that stuff. It invokes this certain reptilian part of your brain that makes you reach out for it. So maybe I'm thinking too much into that.
No, I agree. Just and then you look at some of the trends in fashion or whatever, and then one of the most famous groups right now is BTS, the Korean group, and they all look like girls.
Fashion and what's sexy is it's all relative to the cultural zeitgeist that we're floating around in right now. At one point, sexy, I'm sure you're familiar with this. At one point, sexy was to be really fat and pale, because that was an indication that you could sit inside your palace and just, you had slaves, other people doing the work for you, so you had wealth. So it's like, but we're still doing that. Like now, instead of being fat and pale, there's a really good book called Elephant in the Brain, and he calls it, what's it called, conspicuous consumption is what he calls it. So it's like, now that fat and pale, so that was the conspicuous show of wealth, because I have extra resources. Literally, you can see all these calories on my body, and now it's like, okay, well, that's not sexy anymore. We kind of flip the script on that. But now it's sexy. It's still this conspicuous showing of wealth and resources. We just do it through other means. But I think it's in the end, we're all a bunch of animals, and we want to show that we have resources, and we want to show that we can procreate, and we can take care of our offspring. And so the way we do that, muscles is a conspicuous show of health. And a conspicuous show of health is an indication that you have too much time on your hands. So you've already figured out base level resources.
You can see that, there's when people make a certain level of money, they look money healthy because they can go, and take care of preventive medicine, and they eat super organic, foods and whatever, and they work out, and they have a personal trainer, and they look healthy.
Yeah. But yeah, all of it's just signaling, I think, for the most part. And so once you start to become, you're not going to get past that game, but once you start to become knowledgeable of that game, the world just becomes interesting, because really, like, the best car is like a pretty simple car, I think. But instead, we, with high gas mileage and it's dependable and it doesn't get dirty easily, and like, that's the best car. But instead, we get cars that are like notorious for breaking down. The gas mileage is like 16 miles to the gallon or whatever, but it's because we know that everybody knows, oh, wow, you spent 90,000 on that car. It's like, okay, cool, sweet, great. If it's a piece of shit, it doesn't matter, because I have $90,000 to buy a piece of shit. Like, that's how much money I've got.
And yeah, and that is, what's happening, in even within the ancestral and paleo and health community, you can see some of this virtual signaling, with like, these are all my supplements that I take, as in, like, I must be very, very healthy, or, because I have done the research to take all of these things and to do all of these things and take care of myself.
Yeah. With that, I just see somebody carrying a bunch of anchors around, like you could be a really fast catamaran out to sea, just you and the wind, but instead you have all these anchors just pulling you behind. Every time you go anywhere, you travel to Austin or whatever, you got to, like, fill up 2 suitcases of supplements and sleep meds and wake up meds and midday meds. And it's like, dude, you're weak. like if you can't get put out in some random destination with nothing and be able to sort yourself out, you're weak. And not just sort yourself out, but actually feel your best. And that's the thing that people will find is, like, one of the healthiest, most vitality inducing things that they can do isn't buy more supplements. It's cut everything out entirely and just stop eating. Maybe, don't do it forever, but, like, that's for most people, in my own experience. I wonder how your experience is with that. Like, fasting has been one of the most profound effects on my level of cognitive health, physical health, even strength, but, like, that's not a very advantageous thing to, there's not a good affiliate link for fasting.
Rob Wolf used to say, like, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to, take a little bit of magnesium. And that's because, it's depleted from the soil and blah, blah, blah. But it's really hard to monetize. Take a little bit of magnesium, So then he joked about, like, making the magnesium diet. And it's like you sleep 8 hours, you eat a paleo, template, you work out not like an idiot, and you take magnesium at night. And of course, it's the magnesium diet, and people are gonna be like, "Oh, magnesium," and everything's gonna work, but it's because of the lifestyle, not because you're taking magnesium.
Yeah, Dr. Andrew Weil, I forget his book. It might be called like The Creative Mind. I don't remember. I don't think it's called Creative Mind, but Dr. Weil, he's got a good book about how powerful our own creation of the way that we think and the way that we feel is. Like he talks about with cannabis, for example, people typically when they smoke weed the first time, they won't get high. And he describes that as you need to learn how to get high. So you actually need to kind of program in that sensation of like, okay, this is the effect that I derive from this plant. And I think that so much of like dietary fads, when people start a new diet, they have effect, and it's like you could be going carnivore, or you can start fasting, or you can start vegetarian or vegan, whatever. At first, I think the thing that's really important with that is the fact that you're actually taking intention in what you put into your face, and then you'll feel effect. And then you start shining the scientific flashlight on why this specific dietary thing makes you feel so good. And you'll find answers, because it's just like when you Google search anything. And it'd be like, oh, there we go. There's the answer. You just have to write in like, why does this make me feel better? Or why does this make me feel worse?
You can always figure out a mechanism. You can always
find a mechanism, man. And so we're so sensitive to placebo and nocebo. In the end, I think it's like, your thoughts are powerful, man. Like you become your thoughts. And we put so much emphasis into really specific variables quite often because, again, they have affiliate codes and there's the influencers are talking about them and it starts spreading like wildfire. And now, okay, well, everybody's doing it. So I'm in this echo chamber. So I guess I need to be going keto or whatever it may be. Nothing against keto or for keto. I don't care.
Or fasting.
Because
going back to the Homo domesticus fragilis, if you can't go 4 hours without eating,
that's a problem.
that's a fucking problem. If you can't go 6 hours without eating, if you can't go, 2 hours and you start getting shaky or hungry, that's a fucking problem. That is not natural. If our ancestors were, just hypoglycemic and they couldn't, after not eating for 6 hours, we wouldn't be here. The problem is that there are people that are really sick and they have hormonal imbalances or they might be orthorexic and they shouldn't be fasting now. We should be getting them to a healthy point in life where they are able to fast. But two things happen, People will try the fasting, they can't do it, and they'll say, oh, that's bullshit, and they'll find a way of confirming that their bias is true. Or two, they can't do it, they get sicker, and then they double down and they do it more, and then they get deeper into that hole. And that is really crazy because the message is just so loud. Fast, 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 fast. And the people that are doing the fasting are very charismatic, your message, my message, we have a way of words, we tend to attract people. And when we put something out, it might not work for you. Just think about this, for a second, how many women go to PaleoFX? Just percentage-wise, how many guys are the ones presenting? It is completely disproportionate that women are not represented on the stage in any conference, not just PaleoFX. In any conference, my profession, the naturopathic profession, 80% female. You go to conferences, we have all of these guys putting out a message, and the audience happens to be female, and maybe fasting for a person with hypothyroid is not the best idea. But because you look so hot and it works for you as a guy physiologically, you think it should work for me, and then the results are not right. It's a big problem within the medical community. Entire books, medical books, are being written in China because the physiology of the white Anglo-Saxon male that all of the medical books are based on kind of doesn't fit the Chinese male or female. So we kind of need to, again, go back and listen to your body and start with, am I enjoying this? Does this bring me happiness? and then then look for the results.
Yeah, I think the same goes for like scientific research and studies. It's based off of predominantly, again, white Anglo-Saxon, male or female probably, but like young college students that need an extra $40, and can sacrifice their afternoon to do some weird guinea pig stuff to their body.
Yeah.
That's like so, and then that's I think that's it. Like coming back and actually checking in with yourself. Like I'm only saying fasting is like a just as one obvious example of like it's not always the stuff that you buy.
Dude, and I agree 100%. Like for example, my AC broke last night, so kind of shitty night of sleep. Woke up, had to go to the dentist. It's 12:30. I had dinner last night. I had a couple of drinks watching Game of Thrones. I'm probably not gonna eat until tonight. Completely unplanned fasting because I feel robust enough that I can do it. So I agree with you. Being able to sustain a fast is a marker of health.
Yeah, and exposing yourself to those variables. It's like something that came up for me as you were talking about hermetic stressors, and it's like the cold plunge is something that's a sexy subject right now as well. And again, it's the same thing. If you're like about to get sick, or your body's already strung out, like maybe it's maybe take a brisk walk instead of putting yourself in like an icy plunge. But exposing yourself to those controlled environments, it really does set your nervous system up for exposure to stressors that are actually like meaningful in the future. Like there was some research around dropping rat pups into these ice baths, as they're pups or babies. And so the researchers did that regularly. And then as they got older, they didn't have as strong of a response to stressors. So something crappy happened in their lives, and they're like, "Oh, it's fine. Life happens. We could still get through this." So but it's all dosage. It's like the dose is what makes the poison. So if you can control your life in such a way that you can apply those stressors yourself, that's really the goal. We've gone so far into the point of ameliorating any type of stressor in our life that now we become weak and it's dangerous to be in our bodies. So it's just finding that sweet spot.
So do you do the cold showers?
Yeah, I do cold shower, but I have a freezer. Like 4 feet away from me right now. So I got into that before this, and my body's like literally just almost right just before the call, my body like stopped kind of like shivering ish. So to me, that's like, there's no better cup of coffee or stimulant than actually putting my body through a challenging thing like that. There's I don't know who said it, but this is something like hunt your fears or they'll hunt you. That might be like kind of a strong statement for some people, but like I think like if there's something that makes you uncomfortable, it's valuable for you to be the aggressor with that and seek that out, actively seek those parts of you out, because they're going to be there regardless. And so I find the freezer is just like a little micro example of something. Like before I get into it, I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to do this, but then I get out and every time I feel like I've won. It's like a little victory.
That's one thing. That's one thing that every year, man, I'm like, I'm gonna start doing cold showers. I just love warm showers so much. So every year, especially in Arizona, when it gets 118 degrees, I start like getting into the cold shower routine, and I always fall through. I need to do it. That should be my goal for 2019. I need to start doing cold showers every day.
Well, you can do heat too. You got cold shock proteins and you got heat shock proteins.
Yeah, right.
Your body just needs stress. Like I don't think it really cares that much. It just needs regular dosage of stress that you're able to manage. So spending time in hot heat and enduring that, I think is equatable to spending time in cold temperatures.
So what other hormesis type things do you do, but not for your health or well-being, but I guess it is health and well-being, but more for like your joints and for your alignment.
Yeah, I'm sitting on the floor right now. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
if
standing.
there's any, and you're moving back and forth, you're pacing back and forth, so that's helpful with, one, like moving lymphatic fluid is a big thing, so our lymph, for that to be able to move through our body, is it takes muscular contractions. It's not like the heart where it's like pumping it back naturally, so you need, in order, your body becomes toxic if you just sit still all the time, which is why you start to feel kind of crappy. You get backed up with your own sewage system essentially. So right now, as we're doing this, I'm sitting on the ground. I think sitting on the ground is, if I wanted to get like superlative about it, I think sitting on the ground is the best resting position, because a few things. One, you're mobilizing your hips. You're taking your hips through a variety of ranges of motion. You go through like 90-90 position. You can go Sukhasana across your legs. You do a straddle position. Like, you're really taking your legs through a full range of motion with that. Two, it's better for your circulation. So you're bringing your legs closer to your heart. So it's like a closer, it's like more of a closed circuit. So that just makes your heart not to need to work so hard, and every time you're moving your lower body around and stretching those limbs out, you're pushing all that lymph and all that blood back up to the heart to be processed. It's better for digestion, same reason, because the whole circulation thing, so if you're standing, or even sitting, and your legs are just further away from your belly, that's blood that's pulling up down in your lower compartments that could be used for your vital organs. So that's something that I do throughout the day. Like, I'm writing this whole entire book from the ground, not to make any statement. That's just the only way that makes sense. So, as I'll do that as well, my office, in quotations, will be outside, in the sun. So I'll have like a yoga mat. I'll have like some self-care stuff. I'll have like a foam roller and, all that. And sitting out in the sun, I'll also be actively looking out into the distance. Right. So if we're staring into a screen all the time, that's literally a stressor for your nervous system. It's not a bad thing. But when you look up close, there's a guy called Andrew Huberman. You're familiar with Huberman? His stuff about visual
Yoga.
light stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So looking up close versus looking out in that panoramic view puts you into more of like a rest, digest, calm kind of state of mind. When you look up close, it's more like objective based, get it done. And I'm staring at the cell phone. I'm staring at the paper to, like, sign my signature fast or whatever. I'm getting the objective done. So making sure that you actually are balancing that time of looking up at things myopically close, balance that with looking out into the distance is huge. Not just for exercising your eyes so you don't develop myopia, but also literally it's beneficial for your whole global nervous system.
And we can use this modern technology as a way of being productive too. Like, for example, if I have to write a blog, I don't do it standing up, on my standing desk. No, like if I need to do and dig into the science, I go to my desk, I sit at my desk, I put my and it focuses me, and I just don't do it every day. And it like puts me in the zone, and I go deep into subjects, and I can use that. But to be doing your homework and then to be doing your social media and in the same position all the time, it's just gonna wear you out.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with sitting on a chair. With anything, like, there's an art and science to literally every movement that you make throughout the day. So there's simple things like you could do, like get a chair tall enough so that your hips are above your knees. So if you rolled a ball down your femurs or your thigh, your leg, it would roll down. It wouldn't roll back to your crotch. If it rolls back to your crotch, and that's going to be putting your pelvis in kind of a compromised position where it rolls your pelvis posteriorly. So now all of a sudden you're putting stress on your low back, and like you're not creating a good alignment or stack through your spine. So that's like looking at the quality of your sit is really valuable. But the real issue with sitting is just that it's a dosage thing. That's all our culture does. You start off as a baby and you start, you roll over and you create spinal extension and you do on these spiral stuff, and then you get up on all fours, and then you get up into a squat position, and then your parents put you into a cradle and put you back into the fetal position, and then you're in a car seat and you're back in the fetal position. And then it's like, that's not human. It's inhuman. Like we come from being on our mothers, or fathers or whatever. We're walking around and we're bouncing, boom, 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 and we're developing our neurology. It's like It's crucial for human development that we are exploring a wider variety of movements. Sitting is not human. That's all you do.
And it's incredible because, like, for example, I have a niece and nephew, and they squat with such perfect form.
It's no big deal. It shouldn't even be a conversation, Guillermo. Like, it's like we shouldn't even be talking about it. Like, of course, I do too. You do too. The issue is that we stopped.
And it's innate. It's programmed into our DNA to be able to go ass to grass and pick up something.
Yes, you even have little squatting facets, little like disc sliding surfaces around your tibia, so that you can actually, when you go in, like a fetus comes out with these little facets in the front of the tibia for that full dorsiflexion range of motion. So when you come out of your mom, you're squat ready.
So what do you say about people that say, "Oh, I don't squat because it hurts my knees"?
I think that you had too much time away and you need to slowly titrate it back into your life. So it's the same thing with like sitting in the freezer for 5 minutes hurts my everything. So it's like, okay, well, maybe just go outside on a brisk day in a t-shirt and see how that is. Like slowly drop yourself into this stuff until eventually, you can jump into a polar plunge in Poland or whatever. So with the same thing with squatting, like spend more time on the ground. Bar none, there's nothing that people can do in our present modern movement mold that would have higher impact for less cost than spending more time on the ground, without a doubt. So as you're going through that, so think about what being on the ground is. It's not just being on the ground. You have to get down to the ground, and then you have to get back up from the ground. So as you do that, you're passively, indirectly, in a roundabout way, going through those full range of motions that start developing your capacity for a deep squat. Not to mention all of the cardiovascular stuff, like there's so many different variables that you're doing there. And all you're doing is just being more like your human self, which is the way that your kids would be. If you give your kids a chair if they're like under 5 years old, they'll only play on it. Like they're like, I get it. It's a shape. It's fun. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a shape. It's great. Okay, cool. I'll twist on it and I'll turn on it and I'll pretend it's a car and then I'll fall over on it.
Yeah, you're right. My niece, just thinking about it, I visited my parents in Texas a couple of months ago, and they had like a little pink kind of like pool chair or whatever. And I was so nervous because the only thing she wanted to do on it was climb and get up on it. Like she just wanted to just be on top, at a higher vantage. She wouldn't sit on it. She was just playing with it.
Isn't that amazing? She would be at a higher vantage. So think about that, what that does at the whole eye yoga stuff.
Yeah.
So babies is like, they'll do the same stuff with there's a thing called Brahmari pranayama, which is like a pranayama yoga technique where it's incorporating humming, which is really effective for downregulating your nervous system and increases nitric oxide, doing all this great stuff for you. But what they'll do with it is they'll put their thumbs, the yogis, they'll put their thumbs into their ears, so you can't hear anything. And then you have an option to cover your eyes as well. And then you hum, and it has all these amazing effects on your nervous system. That's what kids do when they freak out. They're like, they get really stressed out. Naturally, their physiology says, okay, I'm gonna hum this shit out.
Reset. Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're 40-year-old adults or whatever that are paying people X amount of dollars for a retreat. They can teach you what your 3-year-old kid naturally would have taught you. Like if your kid gets stressed out, like just check them out. And what's the biggest thing that your kid's gonna do is, again, like the way that they move is such a way that they're not going to have those. Well, I mean, I guess kids do have freakouts, actually, as I'm saying that. I'm like, oh, kids do have breakdowns. That's okay. They're learning how to live in the world.
The funniest thing is that their tantrums are more emotional. But
they cut back. They snap back, though. So human beings, like adults, we can have those moments where we're like, but instead we just internalize it and keep on marching forth until we like blow up a bank or something.
Where kids have like their emotions in their sleeves and they're like, I don't want to go to sleep, and and they just stomp their feet and they just fall asleep eventually. With adults, once you experience one of those tantrums or breakdowns, you're probably having a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that kids do really well is they touch. So there was I was putting I have a chapter in the upcoming book called about touch, called Out of Touch, and it's the opening. We get into this research from a lady called Dr. Tiffany Field, and she was studying premature infants. And typically, you didn't want to touch the infants because you didn't want to mess them up or bacteria or whatever. And so they'd be in the incubators and just sitting there, just like feeding them goo or whatever they're feeding them. And then she's like, "Hey, these guys they need to be touched. They need to be massaged." So they just introduced 15 minutes of massage 3 times a day, and they ended up gaining weight. I think it was 47% faster than the kids that weren't being touched. They ended up leaving the hospital 6 days earlier. So just that simple act of having that tactile sensation, it literally turns your whole nervous system on. And a little kid, they naturally will do that. They'll naturally make eye contact with you. They'll look at you and say, "Hey." Adults are like, "Oh." We're wrapped up in ourselves because we're raised in these kind of autonomous, isolated models. And that model will stress you the freak out. And here we are.
So that's why you were touching everyone at PaleoFX.
Yeah, I'm a toucher, but I try to be. But that's another thing. So touching people like NBA players that touch each other more often. There's another study that measured the amount of times that they were touched throughout practice. The teams that touch each other the most were the most successful in the actual season. So every time you're making that contact, you're literally creating these bonds.
So how do you ethically disperse this through populations? What is your touching routine protocol? So I don't.
Well, you could start off and just get a freaking massage. If it helps children thrive, like failure to thrive is a literal term, then it also helps adults. So if that's your thing and you have a couple extra bucks, get a massage. If you don't have a couple extra bucks, but you have a person in your life that you care about, maybe trade massages, have a massage night. Instill specific, let's actually go out of our ways to make a touch container. If you're open to doing a massage thing. If that's too far, you don't have another person in your life, whatever, just being aware of it in conversation. So you can see different cultures, the amount of times they touch each other, more like the romantic countries in Spain. I remember being in Spain. I thought all the women wanted to sleep with me because I'm American. And the women would touch and "Oh yes, oh," you're touching your arm and your shoulder and all that stuff. And I'm like, "Oh my God,
I'm moving.
It's on." I'm like, no, it's a cultural thing. We just touch. It doesn't mean I want to sleep with you. Whereas the American mind perceives that as "Oh, okay, cool, sex." Female touched my elbow, cool, sex. That's where our minds are at, and that's a broken mind. Touch it's those little micro touches. It's almost like they're affirming your existence. When you're isolated, it's easy to become disassociated. And if you're disassociated, you're depressed. And so every time you have that, someone just reach out and grab your hand, grab your elbow, shoulder, give you a hug, whatever. If it's actually meaningful, because then there's something to the quality of the touch. It really is like a confirmation that you're here and you're connected.
And how many people have gone, how many weeks or months without being touched?
I don't even want to think about it, man.
Yeah. Get a dog.
Yeah, exactly. They're little love heaters. They just emit love. That's what dogs do.
So I do a little bit of pro therapy and, PRP at the office. When I was in school, I geeked out in regenerative injections and stuff like that. Now I do more, my love is endocrinology. But I do have a lot of knowledge when it comes to injection therapy. And I always told my patients, okay, so yeah, this injection is going to help you. It's going to regenerate some stuff. It's going to proliferate some healing factors. But you need massage. And fascia, I don't think gets talked about enough within the health space.
Yeah. They call it the organ of form. It's got more sensory receptors than any other organ in your whole body. That for forever it was eyes that were considered to be, but fascia is it's the most sensitive tissue that we have throughout our whole system. It's telling where you are in space all the time. And if you are disconnected from that, there's an interesting thing when people have back pain, it'd be harder for them to actually create an image of that part of their back. So if you say like, oh, draw a picture of your back, if you're a person that has back pain, it's like, I just don't, it just is a blur. It's like a blank spot back there, and so we can, again, this disassociation thing can happen. And then we become, disconnected from that part in our body. That disconnection can lead to generally just like less effective movement mechanics, but also pain. And then also maybe numbness, which is even worse than pain. And so it's such a valuable thing for people to literally have some kind of tactile practice affirming all of the different little nooks and crannies of their body. It's not just like if your whole body work experience is like someone rubbing your traps, you're completely missing out on a really fully embodied experience. So I would recommend people start using, get like a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball or whatever, and start rolling out your feet while you're at work. And as I recommend sitting on the ground, so you're contacting more of your body on the ground. My hands are on the ground, my whole leg is on the ground. You can put a ball underneath your shin, roll out all those spots. As you're doing that, you can start to bring awareness, intentionally bring awareness into those parts of your body. Cats do this all the time. You see a cat like walk through a room and they just like rub their whole body up against a couch or up against your leg. I don't know exactly what they're doing, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure they're doing that. Like they're creating an internal body map of where they are in space. And if you watch them move around, they're pretty darn good movers.
Yeah. Very agile. So when is your book coming out, man? And how long have you been working on it?
So we've been, officially like a year, I would say, has been like really properly working on it, but that includes the proposal process. And the pre-sale will be October. The launch date or pub date is December 24th, so the day before Christmas. Which is a strange day, but apparently like publishers like Tuesdays or something.
Yeah. And what, who is this book for? What is the message for, and where can people find you?
So the book is, it breaks down 5 simple things that I think everybody needs to be doing for optimal movement / mental emotional health that few people are. So one of those is like spending more time on the ground. Another one is hanging more each day. The other one is hinging from your hips, and there's a couple more. And essentially, it's like a user's manual for how to inhabit your body throughout the day, so that literally anything you're doing, every moment can be an opportunity to make your mind and body work better. Yeah, I'm excited about it, man. I think it's a bridge for people that are kind of unsure about like going as far as like a CrossFit or like, super stereotypical fitness, to realize that like, dude, you are fitness. You're always doing fitness. Your senses are a form of fitness. Your sight, your sound, your touch, mindfulness, all of that literally informs your physiology at, in some ways a deeper way than the typical like gym workout would. So it gives people empowerment to start incorporating fitness into their whole lives. So people sitting at desks looking at computers would probably be an important demographic of that.
I think you think that. I think that this book will resonate really strongly with people that are addicted to CrossFit.
I agree.
Because like that's me, when I started eating paleo and CrossFit. They were hand in hand and doing like the HIIT workouts and and just, trying to see the white buffalo in the sky and, doing AMRAPs and whatever. And now my workouts consist of 30 minutes of squats, deadlifts, overhead press, strict press, and rows. And it's a combination of those 3. I have an A and B. I do 30 minutes, and I feel healthier. I feel better, and my joints feel better. So I think that your book would be like the next step for me, because I'm stuck in this very mechanic, workout routine, and I need to incorporate more play or more, human movement into my workout.
I love that. I agree. I really appreciate you saying that. But yeah, so you just can't say it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, I'm like, it's for everybody. I'm like, okay, here's
your grandma? Over here's your book.
Avatar of who it's for.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that that anything like this, that makes us more human or brings us more to our baby stage, and makes us more, in tune with our environments and proprioception, man. You never said proprioception when we were talking about fascia, but it's just so important to be aware of where you are and who you are. And I think this is going to be a big bridge.
And then interoception is another, fun term, for
I'm not familiar with that one.
Your internal awareness of, the state of your organs, your heartbeat, it's like that internal awareness of yourself is something that can be cultivated. Just like your proprioceptive awareness of where your body parts are in space, you can also go another layer in and actually feel where your internal self is in space and what's the function of your insides. And things like sitting in a cold plunge are helpful for that. It slows everything down and you start to feel warmth started to kind of permeate through your viscera, or meditation is a great one for that. Just focusing on your breath, focusing on your heartbeat. Take your own heartbeat, just like take it right now and just feel into that. And maybe you can start to coordinate your breath with your heartbeat. Like all those things are just like bring you back home. So much of us, our awareness is all out there. It's all reaching out, and the actual anchor point that you have with yourself is like, dismal. So any practice to bring you back into your body will make you feel happier, stronger, healthier, more productive, like all the crap that you want.
Yeah. And you can always add, the mechanistic or, the routine squats and deadlifts and whatever. You can always add that. But, we are so far away from what you're talking about that we really need to reset the system. Dude, where can people find you? How can people get a hold of you?
Everything's at Align Podcast. So if they just go to Align Podcast anywhere, like Instagram or YouTube or whatever, Instagram is probably the place where most people will go. The website's alignpodcast.com. So just type that in, you'll find it.
Awesome, dude. This has been a fantastic conversation. I think I'm going to see you in San Diego pretty soon here.
Looking forward to it,
dude.
Man.
And then I'll take my record and then I'll record a podcast for your podcast.
Yes, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.